Nobody's expecting me to sing. Good afternoon to you all. It seems we've been talking about these things all week, and at least on our jobs and with our friends in the neighborhood, and nobody seems to have an idea what's going on. But if we're believers in God, we do know, at least on some level, we have some idea what's going on. It seems the indicators of spiritual change continue on. Those spiritual indicators of change that have come at us seemingly more and more every week. We see them, we hear about them, we read them, but if we're reading also this word of Yeshua, we know that what we're seeing shouldn't have us as afraid as many are. Because these things are only warnings. Warnings that we're building toward something bigger. Let's drop anchor and start at Matthew, the 24th chapter, the 6th verse. Matthew, the 24th chapter, the 6th verse, where it says, "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For these things must needs come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and earthquakes in diverse places. But all these things are simply the beginning of travail." Need another witness? Let's go to Mark, the 13th chapter, the 7th verse. Because you hear it all over. Even a lot of the ministers are saying, "Oh, this is it. Get ready, get ready, get ready to fly away." And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. Mark, the 13th chapter, the 9th verse, the 7th verse rather, where it says, "When you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be not troubled. These things must needs come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be earthquakes in diverse places," and you're hearing about more and more worry about things up and down the New Madrid fault line, which runs right through Illinois. "There shall be famines. These things are the beginning of travail. But take you heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to the councils, and in synagogues shall you be beaten." Has that started yet? Not here. But in other places, yes. "And before kings and governors, and shall you stand for my sake for a testimony against them." And don't worry about what to say. He's already promised in another place, he'll show you what to say. Luke, the 21st chapter, the 9th verse. "And then you shall hear of wars and tumults, but be not terrified. For these things must needs come to pass first, but the end is not yet," or not immediate. "Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be great earthquakes, and in diverse places famines and pestilence," which we're seeing, drought in California. "And there shall be terrors and great signs from heaven." Not quite so great yet, but you're getting little things like we had during the spring holy days, we had our blood moon. Some people didn't see it, they slept right through it and thought, "Oh, that's no big thing," but it was there, and there's more to come. Now, but you see, according to the words of our Messiah, these things must happen first. The wars, the rumors of wars, even the shooting down of commercial airliners is the result of war. Now, most of us haven't seen a war on this soil, so we don't really know what all that entails, but this is normal in a war. We've not seen much modern warfare up close. So these things might sound strange and fearful to us, but let's understand something. War produces, for all involved, pretty much one thing. Was it Edwin Starr? What is it good for? Exactly. Except for one thing, that Satan tends to like: death. Death, death, and more death. The only true result of war is death. Many leaders throughout history have made jaded attempts to justify every war. You'll hear some of them talk about the good war. And you go back and look at the good that came of it, and years later there was another war in the same land. And the only end result was more death. More death. So they justify their petty wars, their land grabs, and their theft by saying that we're helping the people. The people don't seem to be getting help, though. So then, after that doesn't work, then they'll run to the ministers and have the ministers say that God allowed the war. It was a good war. It was a good war in a holy land. But if we go back into the Bible and read it with kingdom eyes, we'll see that only when the people were bent on evil against God's people and would not be deterred, only then did God lead his people into war against them. Somewhere else it says that there's a time for all things, and one of the things listed in Ecclesiastes is war. Now, is that saying that God approves of it? No, but you're in a fallen world, therefore there are going to be some fallen things that happen. One of those fallen things just happens to be war, and since the tool was there in his way, God found time to use it. But man turned around and says, well, we can use it too, but we don't use it the same way he did. He did it to vanquish evil and sin. We do it for money. As I said, only when the people were bent on evil against God's people and would not be stopped or would not be deterred did God lead his people into war against them. For instance, in Egypt. Everybody says, well, that was a war. No. In Egypt, God himself did the killing. He did the killing of the firstborn despite the barbarous behavior of King Ramses and his people against the Israelites. And let's understand that the only slavery that was worse than the Egyptian slavery was the antebellum South. So keep waiting. But note the killer of the firstborn in Egypt. Let's go to Exodus, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse. Point out a few things that we should know, but we need to reinforce these things because in the course of saying that these things are okay, we try to justify it by saying God did it, therefore we can, which automatically does something man likes to do, at least educated man likes to do it. But most of us are realizing that we're not quite on the same plane as God, but they tend to like to put themselves there. We'll deal with that later. Exodus, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse, where it says, and Moses said, thus saith Yahweh, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt. He didn't say you go out. He said I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn of the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sits upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of cattle. And just to make it crystal clear who was doing the smiting. Let's go to Exodus 12, chapter, the 29th verse. Back it up with scripture, if you're going to say. Exodus, the 12th chapter, the 29th verse, where it says, "And it came to pass at midnight that Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead." In reading the story of the Exodus, this was a last straw and proved to be the event that finally caused Pharaoh to wise up and release the Israelites from their slavery. But to our point, God only killed this evil undeterred. Now notice what Pharaoh did even after releasing the Israelites. Let's continue to go to Exodus, the 14th chapter, and go to the 5th verse. Exodus, the 14th chapter, the 5th verse, where it says, "And it was told the king of Egypt that the people were fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was changed toward the people." I guess after he heard that it was happening, you know how sometimes somebody tells you something and it doesn't quite sink in, but then after the full effect of it is hit, when you finally realize that it's happening, your heart changes. "And they said, What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made his chariot and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt." The chosen ones, those were the ones that were specifically built and made for war. They would withstand arrow slings and some of the other things that they used for war back then. These were the big tanks, if you will. "And all the chariots of Egypt and captains over all of them. And Yahweh hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. For the children of Israel went out with a high hand." What do they mean when he said they came out with a high hand? First of all, they were told to go and ask the Egyptians for goods. They got gold, they got silver, they got things. And one other thing happened when a lot of them saw that they were leaving. "Hey, I'm going with you." They came with them. As it says that there was a mixed multitude that came out with them. So a lot of the Egyptian people looked at Pharaoh and said, "Hey, this guy is not working in our best interest. This God seems to care about his people. Guess what, y'all? I'm out of here. I'm out of here." Verse 9, "And the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea beside Piharoth before Baal Zephon." Let's go to Exodus, the 14th chapter. Let's continue we're there, go to the 10th verse. "And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto Yahweh, and they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, you have taken us away to die in the wilderness. Wherefore have you dealt thusly with us? Soon as trouble came, they turned. Why have you dealt thusly with us to bring us forth out of Egypt? Is not that the word that we spoke unto you in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it's better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. Let's go down to the 21st verse. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all the night. And the word there says it congealed. Now that's a fascinating word to me, because what congealed means to me that water rose up and froze in place. We see in the movie this rolling water like waterfall, but no, that water sat there in one place, frozen, congealed, like jello, like ice on either side. It made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry land that was now there, with the water sitting up on either side of them. And the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, all his chariots, all his horsemen. And it came to pass in the morning watch that Yahweh looked forth upon the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of cloud, and discomfited the host of the Egyptians. And he took off their chariot wheels, and they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for Yahweh fights for them against the Egyptians. And Yahweh said unto Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength. And when the morning appeared on the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, the Egyptians fled against it. Kind of late now. Little late now. And Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, even all the host of Pharaoh that went in after them into the sea. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them. In other words, while it's wilding up in front of them, and they can walk right through it, it's falling behind them. And these men are dying and drowning in freezing cold water in a hot desert. Only God can do this. Verse 30, thus Yahweh saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw the great work which Yahweh did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared Yahweh, finally, and they believed in Yahweh and in his servant Moses. In case I forgot, this title is, What Does God Hate? Do we? You see, many believers say that God loves war, and they use this as an excuse. This is why God generally did the killing for his people, because he not only dislikes war, he knows what it does to people. God was trying to minimize the killing by doing most of it himself, and later on when they did have to go in, he made sure that when they went in to do killing, they simply killed. What do I mean when I say that? Anybody that's been in a military situation knows what I'm about to say. Because you see, killing alone scars the mind enough. But once you get into a war situation where you're fighting, where you're going against someone that you've already been, if you know anything about how they do this, they already have demonized the enemy. He's a snake, he's a rat, he's not even human. Just go in and do what you will do. Go have your way with him. So if killing is all you've done, that's enough on your mind, but that's not all they do. These men come back, and women now, which just, never mind. That's the last one that should be there for two different reasons that we'll understand right now. They come back from war scarred from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a mental disease. And they can never again function normally in society without much psychological counseling. We're now seeing some of the same symptoms in children and teens raised in the city of Chicago and other cities across this country because of the level of violence and shooting you see in the cities. The kids can't function in school. They take them to a psychologist and find out they had PTSD. And can never again, as I said, function normally in society without psychological counseling. Now, we're seeing this here. We're seeing it all over, but in war it's even worse. You see, God meant to minimize this mental disturbance in his people. Because we're now that more people are coming back from these wars, and if you've got friends that talk more openly about these things, they'll tell you that in mankind's wars, children are terrorized. We're seeing it in Israel now. Women are terrorized. Women, and we're learning now that also men are raped. Their personal possessions are stolen and not returned even after civility is restored. I don't know about you, but that's not war, that's theft. From where I sit, that's theft. War is a bloody, evil business. And many say, in this eye, if you work for, say, the Carlyle group, they say, war is a bloody business, but business is good. Business is good. These men have made themselves rich in the business of war. But know this, God has seen all the events that have transpired on the earth, and all of them are recorded. So don't worry about the Carlyle group. If they don't repent, guess what? Don't worry about any of the other military or industrial complex leaders who have made such obscene profits. Dick Cheney, sorry. I couldn't help it, that just slipped out. All will be judged from the law. We believers are being judged now. But notice that no one will escape God's judgment. Revelation, the 20th chapter, the 12th verse. Revelation, the 20th chapter, the 12th verse, where it says, "And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were opened." Now, these books being the law of God is written in the Bible, but also a book of records of each person's life in detail. All of which was done in the dark, now comes before the blinding judgment light of God. And I saw the great and the small standing before the throne, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of the things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and Hades, or the grave, gave up the dead that were in them. And they were judged, every man according to their works. So those who say you don't have to do anything, point that out to them next time they tell you that, and suggest ever so gently that they might be confused a bit. Don't call them liars. Don't beat them about the head. Just suggest very gently that they might want to look at that one more time with kingdom eyes. Be nice about it. It'll work. The question may seem harsh, but if mankind is to be judged by what we have done here, is it not logical that we have to become more willing to divide that which God agrees with from that which God disagrees with, and live according to that knowledge? Yes, we are to make an attempt to convince those within our influence of the events to come and how to avoid the negative aspects of them by developing a personal relationship with Yeshua, or if they still say Jesus, that's a good time to, again, teach. That's a good time, again, to teach. Many feel that they already have this relationship, and I believe this problem will be solved by the Word of God itself when the beast power and his world government take hold. Why do I feel this way? Because the Bible is true, and people who hear the truth will not be swayed by lies if what they believe is true. You see, unless they're swayed by their fear. And note the words of Yeshua concerning truth and following it. Let's go to John, the 10th chapter, the 14th verse. John, the 10th chapter, the 14th verse, where it says, I am the good shepherd, and I know those that are mine. And I am known by those who are mine. Even as the Father knows me, I also know the Father. And I lay down my life for my sheep. Please don't miss this. Because so many have. And I have other sheep who are not of this fold. What? What you saying there? Hold it. Wait a minute. What are you saying? Let's go and read that again. Make sure we got that right. We're not all here. What are you saying here? And I have other sheep who are not of this fold. I must also lead those. When? And they shall hear my voice, and they shall be one flock. Can you say they are now? He said, they shall be one flock. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Christ explained this further in a parable. Let's go to John, the 10th chapter, and go back to the first verse. Let the Bible explain the Bible. John, the 10th chapter, let's start at the first verse where it says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door, but going up by another way, that one is a thief and a robber. Now keep your finger here, because we'll return here to clean this up. So as not to confuse, it's best here to allow the Bible to interpret the Bible. Note the references to robbers and thieves in the Old and New Testaments. The old references refer to false prophets of Judaism, the Pharisees and modern Zionists, if you will. The new refers to false New Testament teachers who eschew the Sabbath, proffer that you don't need the law. And they say that all you have to do is know the truth. You don't have to follow it, just know it. And God will count it as righteousness to you. Nah, I don't think so. Jeremiah, the 14th chapter, the 14th verse, just to show who he's talking about here. Jeremiah, the 14th chapter, the 14th verse, where it says, and Yahweh said to me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I did not send them. nor have I commanded them, nor did I speak to them. So where are they getting the lies from? Pulling them out of the air or elsewhere. They prophesy to you a false vision and a worthless divination and a thing of no value. And the deceit of their heart, the Bible answers the Bible. You want to know where they got it from? Straight out of their hearts, out of their minds, out of the largesse of their minds. Wow, I think this is true. Therefore, I'll speak it loudly and say that it came from God, please. Verse 15. So Yahweh said this concerning the prophets who prophesy in my name, and I did not send them. Yet they say, sword and famine shall not be in the land. By sword and famine those prophets shall be consumed. But the prophets were not the first to turn their backs on God. Earlier, these same people that came out of Egypt with a strong hand on dry land with water congealed on the sides, after a few years turned around and said, we want a king. 1 Samuel, the 8th chapter, the 5th verse. I'm going to revisit this later in some depth, but we'll just go through it now just to make the point. 1 Samuel, the 8th chapter, the 5th verse, where it says, and they said to him, behold, speaking to Samuel, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now, make us a king to judge us like all the nations. We like all that pomp and circumstance. We like all that riding around in the finest chariots and looking good and having 8 or 9 concubines, and we like that. That's cool stuff, and we like it. So we want a king. Verse 6. But this thing was evil in the eyes of Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. And the rebellion continued into the New Testament. Matthew, the 23rd chapter, the 16th verse. Matthew, the 23rd chapter, the 16th verse says, woe to you, blind guides, saying, whoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he's a debtor. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the temple, the gold, or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he's a debtor. Fool and blind, for which is greater, the gift of the altar, or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, whoever shall swear by the altar swears by it and by all things on it, and whoever shall swear by the temple swears by it and him who dwells in it. And he who shall swear by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithes of mint and dill and cumin, and you have done and left undone the weightier matters of the law. Judgment for those who think we're not to judge. Mercy for those who think we're supposed to beat on somebody after you've judged them. And faith for those who don't believe that a fallen one can be restored. You ought to have done these and not to have left the other undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and of the dish, but inside they're full of extortion and excess. Oh, now he knew who they were talking about. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and of the dish, so that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outside, but inside they're full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. And that's a fascinating word when it's used in that context, because it means homosexuality. In the Pharisees, oh no. Apparently, the element was there. And Peter's warning covers his day up to ours. 2 Peter, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse. 2 Peter, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse, where it says, but there were also false prophets among the people. That's among us. Even as there will be false teachers among you, who secretly will bring in destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing on themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their pernicious ways, and because of them, the way of truth will be evil spoken. In other words, because of the stuff that some of these false ministers do, you hear people now, man, no way I go to church. Ain't nothing there but a bunch of hypocrites. Hear it all the time. Why do you go to church anyway? How much money your preacher make? How many cars he got? You know, you paying for all those cars. What's he supposed to do, walk? But that's a whole other thing that I don't even want to get into. But I understand the frustration, because there's a lot of lying going on out here. Can't say there's not, because there is. Verse 3. And through covetousness, the reason for all of that stealing, they will use you for gain in well-turned words, from whom judgment from of old does not linger, and their destruction does not sleep. Let's remember, there is a record. There is a record. There have been few throughout time who have faithfully followed the way of Christ and his kingdom. And even the men set in place by the Hebrews were sold out. Now let's get back to John the 10th chapter, the 2nd verse, and you'll find out that here Yeshua spoke of the sold out Pharisees. But it is assumed by many scholars that they did not know that he spoke of them. Let's go back to John the 10th chapter, the 2nd verse. John the 10th chapter, the 2nd verse, where it says, but he who enters in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The doorkeeper opens to him, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Have you ever worked on a farm? Have you ever herded sheep? That job became yours, and you got lazy one morning and sent somebody else out there, and they called those sheep, and those sheep were like ramming you, butting you, ignoring you, going wherever they wanted to go. And then he had to go back and get the guy that normally does it, and once he comes out, hey, they line right up and they follow him. He knew what he was talking about. You see, a lot of this was written in an agrarian time where people raised sheep, where people grew their own food. They didn't have to go to Monsanto. Oh, never mind. Never mind. Verse 4. And when he puts forth his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And they will not follow a stranger, a Satan. I won't name anybody. We'll just let that shake out in its own time. And they will not follow a stranger, but will flee from it. For they do not know the voice of strangers. Yeshua spoke this parable to them, but they did not understand what it was which he spoke to them? Oh, I think they did. And I think the proof of that is on Golgotha. Calvary, if you will. Oh, I think they did know he spoke of them, but chose not to act so as not to cause a tumult, knowing that a riot at this time may put them in a bad light with Caesar. This could remove them from their plush offices down at the temple. And they might lose their positions of authority where they could just walk into Pilate's office anytime they want to and ask for something that normally they wouldn't dare ask for. They could go into Herod's office and say, well, Pilate wouldn't do it for me. Can you hook me up? And if that doesn't work, then, well, can you go talk to Caesar for us? Please. You don't want to lose that kind of influence. That kind of juice goes a long way, doesn't it, Mayor? Oh, let me shut up. You see, the avoidance of these things may go a long way teaching us who the wolves are among us, and will teach us a more excellent way of life. You see, these are the things that God hates, and we will see that these things are put there and they're told us so that we avoid them. But in avoiding them, we will find that most of our personal problems will disappear. Now it gets interesting, because we're not talking about what somebody else did do. We're talking about what we can do. We have 100% control over that. So let's exercise it. Proverbs, the 6th chapter, the 16th verse. This was the one that I was supposed to be doing next week, and somebody thought better of that and said, do it this week. I'll have something better for you next week. And I trust him to do that. Proverbs, the 6th chapter, the 16th verse, where it says, these 6 Yahweh hates. 7 are hateful to his soul. Let's not even read them there. Let's just go through them one at a time. First, verse 17, a proud look. A proud look. First of all, God hates haughty eyes. Well, let's go through them all first, and then we'll just line it up, because it makes more sense of what he's got here so that we understand fully what he's talking about. 17, a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that plots wicked plans, feet hurrying to run to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and he who causes fighting among brothers. Now, that we blow through that. We fly through that stop sign too fast. We go through it as a rolling stop, and we forget what's there. And sometimes when you go through something with a rolling stop, there's the cop right there, pulls right up behind you. What did I do? Oh, that was a stop. You did a rolling stop. Oh, no, I stopped. Did you stop completely? Did your head jerk a little bit? No. Then you wouldn't stop. That was a rolling stop. And guess what? $100. Now, let's stop right here at each one, so that we don't get God's $100 ticket later on. First of all, God hates haughty eyes. Haughty eyes imply lifting or exalting oneself. You hear that old thing they used to say, all I saw was his nose hairs. I'm all that. Exalting oneself in pride and arrogance and being consumed with yourself. That looks so good. I'm so smart. Please. Blank, please. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Haughtiness is driven by a disdain for others and an attitude of superiority and a confidence in our own ideas, so much as to betray a lack of trust in God. Haughty is like Nebuchadnezzar looking over the kingdom which he claims he built all by himself, only to be given the mind of a beast so God could humble him. You find that story in Daniel, the 4th chapter, the 28th verse. We don't have time for it. Just write it down if you haven't read it. I'm sure most of us have. Watch for folk who are always ready to correct you on things that bother them personally, but are not in themselves ready to change anything you might suggest to them. Because they're not in themselves, and they may not be in themselves sinful or ungodly, but humility is the antithesis of haughtiness. It's the opposite of haughtiness. For when we're humble, we care about others. We thank God for his provisions. We refuse to exalt ourselves, and we acknowledge God in all things, because after all, what did he say? The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine, so is my Rolex. So is your whatever you've got. And so is whatever. It's all God, just not mine. As if I had a Rolex. There's nothing there. And we acknowledge God in all things. Proverbs 3:5. God hates haughty eyes that look down on others and refuse to look up to him. Now let's go to the second. God hates a lying tongue. Stay there and take the heat, brother. Satan is the father of lies. John, the 8th chapter, the 44th verse, for those who don't know where it is. So it makes sense that God hates lying for those people who think that he doesn't hate Satan. Oh, they were good friends at one time. Well, that all kind of fell apart real fast. Now, lying may seem like a trivial sin as compared to murder or adultery or any of that other stuff, but God does not view lying as trivial, because he sees the end of it from the Genesis. He sees all the bad that comes of each incident from the beginning. We don't. You think about the guy that went up and he says, okay, told a little lie. He says, okay, let's go up on the hill. I'm going to show you what you just did. I want you to go up on the hill and take this pillow up there and tear it open and throw all the pillows out and throw all the feathers all up and down, and then they strode up and the wind blew and threw them all over the place. He says, okay, Pastor, I did that. Now what you want me to do? He said, I want you to go get them all back. Lying, we never see the whole of it, because all we see was our gums bumping and seeing somebody else running off. Oh, did you hear about what? Girl. Not beating on the ladies, but there's some guys that do it too. I ain't pointing nobody out, but it is what it is. But lying makes love impossible, makes truth difficult, and makes relationships very hard to sustain. Lying breaches trust and creates an island out of a person. Lying to gain advantage or to avoid harm. And then, of course, if you avoid harm, what does that mean? If somebody throws an arrow at you and you duck, what happens? It's going to hit somebody else that maybe the arrow wasn't intended for. Those who are given to lying, that's not the one that tells one and repents of it and stops. I'm talking about the one that does it all the time because they like that drama. Some people like drama. I never understood that. Some people like it. They get off on it. They watch it. They seek it out. Ooh, did you hear about so-and-so? They on the phone. Did you hear? What happened? Those who are given to lying are likely also given to some other pattern of sin that they must lie to conceal. Liars are people. But liars don't love people. They love lying. They love manipulating people through their lies. Although they may pretend to, lying will lead us downward faster than we can ever imagine, because once you get caught, you got to do more lying to get out of that. And eventually, something my dad used to always tell me, why don't you tell the truth? Then it's easy to remember. The truth, on the other hand, will instantaneously set us free. Notice this, what Yeshua told the Jews who were confused by the lies of the Pharisees. John, the 8th chapter, the 31st verse. John, the 8th chapter, the 31st verse, where it says, Then Yeshua said to the Jews who believed on him, and there were some then and there are some now, If you continue in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Third, God hates hands that shed innocent blood. God hates unjust wars because people died that did not have to. He hates murder, and he hates it when we do what we can, but we don't do what we can to intervene and protect the innocent life. So for every time you hear somebody say, stop snitching, we know what they're saying. I want to die. I want to die. Every time you hear, stop snitching, think, I want to die. And eventually they will. He hates murder. He hates it. But he also hates when we don't want to intervene and protect the innocent life when we know the truth and don't tell it. God hates laws that don't protect the innocent and those who cannot defend themselves. God hates those who corrupt themselves so severely that the consequences of their own actions lead to untold suffering for others. God wants people, churches, and nations who live with uprightness and integrity, and who can be beacons of hope for others, who when they feel like, wow, look at what they're doing, I want to do what they're doing. I want to join that church. I want to see what their God is all about. And maybe it's different than all these others. We're going to go check them out. Let's see what they're all about. We want to see people that are standing up on behalf of the innocent. The fool cares not for innocent life because they can't barely care for their own. But he'll do whatever it takes for his own convenience and selfish gain. And all this will be judged if we don't repent. Just that simple. Fourth, God hates a heart that devises wicked plans. I realize that there are times when you're writing fiction and you got a fertile mind and you want to do that. Write some fiction. Why you got to mess around in folks' lives? It's one thing to engage in doing evil, but God hates it even more when all we ever think about is doing evil. Think about it. We just think about it. We dream about it. We wonder, wow, I wonder what happened if this happened. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, did you hear that? Did you see so-and-so? They made an industry of it. I thought it was good times coming when all of a sudden all the soap operas started to disappear. Then along came the reality shows, and we found out that the payload of the soap operas had turned into the lives of all the people who were now living soap operas in what they call reality television. God sees the end from the Genesis. You see, in the kingdom of God, and this is something that we don't seem to be able to get through our heads, thoughts have a little bit more currency than they do down here. You'll be able to make a thought and make something appear. You can just think of something and it just suddenly happens. You think of something and there it is right in front of you. And I know a lot of people right now thinking, wow, enough to pay my bills next month. Yeah, it could happen. It could happen. Pray harder. But you see, you got to remember, God spoke the universe into existence. In the kingdom of God, our thoughts will have this level of power. The Father wants our thought lives to be honoring to Him, seeking His will and seeking His kingdom rather than plotting a way to do something wrong to somebody else, perhaps in revenge. We could avoid doing a lot of wrong things if we could avoid thinking about wrong things to begin with. And where does that come from? It's the old computer adage, garbage in, garbage out. For all you're watching the soap operas and reality television, somewhere down the line, it's gonna come out in your personal life. If in nothing but gossipy conversations about those shows. Fifth, God hates feet that run to evil. As believers, we have the capacity in Christ to choose the way of escape that He provides so that we need not give in to sin's lure. 1 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, the 13th verse. 1 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, the 13th verse, where it says, no temptation has taken you but what is common to man. In other words, everybody's going through the same thing. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above what you are able, but with the temptation also will make a way to escape so that you may be able to bear it. You see, in this evil world, we need to be saints who fight the devil and resist him by faith. Let's go to Ephesians, the 6th chapter, the 10th verse. Ephesians, the 6th chapter, the 10th verse, where it says, finally, my brothers, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And you can't do that when you're lukewarm. Funny how all this stuff starts to meet up. Bible study runs right into the sermon, and there you go, and whoa. Verse 12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the world's rulers. What? Yeah? Oh, we don't like politics. I don't either, for the same reason. I know who I'm dealing with. The world's rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in high places. 1600. Oh. Therefore, take to yourselves the whole armor of God. 10 down. Take to yourselves the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. When you stand, then your dirt and other folks' foolish runnings to evil just go away. If everybody says, I'm not going to deal with that, what did it say? When the wood goes out, the fire ceases. When the wood runs out, the fire ceases. If nobody's listening, eventually they wouldn't keep watching. They wouldn't keep making these movies if nobody was watching them. They wouldn't keep making these TV shows if nobody was watching them. So somebody's got to be watching them. You see, God does not want us trying to do dirt. He wants us to do the right things, because we don't always think about the long-term consequences of what's about to happen. God does, because He's already seen it 1 billion times. 61 billion, as a matter of fact. We need to be like God, hating evil, not seeking it out. 6, God hates a false witness who utters lies. God already said that he hates lying and a lifestyle that spurns the truth and is totally untrustworthy here, it's obvious that he hates it. He says that. Not only did he say it, go back to Exodus 20:16. It's a commandment. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We need to be those who tell the truth at all times or say nothing. And sometimes you say, well, it was the truth. I had to tell it. No, sometimes you have to do it in such a way that nobody gets hurt. Sometimes you tell the truth not because you want to tell the truth, because you want to see somebody get hurt or you want to see some dirt done. Find the time to do it when it does what it's supposed to do without somebody getting hurt. And you can do that. False witnesses who wrongly defame the reputation of others are a great evil in God's sight, and they will not be let go. We need to be careful and say only what we know, not what we think. By assuming falsely on the part of another and passing those unknown thoughts to others, we're speaking falsehood, which is a sin. Seventh, God hates one who spreads strife among brothers. Hatred and division can develop in most families, especially in a church family. We come here from different physical families, from different strata of income, from different places, and it was far more true when there were so many different cultures here, but it's still true. But we were brought here not to pick at each other about whose circumstances came from. First, we all came out of sin, let's understand this. So let's not get too proud about where we came from, because we all came out of sin. But we came out of it. We didn't bring it with us. We didn't bring it with us. And as I said, hatred and division can develop in most families, and even in the family of God. Especially where any one person decides that they're going to make life miserable for others because of something that they're angry about or hurt about or don't want to talk about, but they're still acting on it. We can spread strife by picking fights, lying, tempting, teasing. Oh, I was just playing. Cut it. If you know the person is hurt by it, it might be fun to you, but it's not fun to them. Cut it. And just by being difficult or having a bad attitude, it causes problems. Some people, I don't know what it is, but I don't understand it. Some people just prefer contention and combat to peace. I like peace, I always did. If I go into a room, there's too much noise, I'm out of there. In my own house, if I hear too much, I'm out of there. Ask them, they'll tell you. I don't want to deal with it. I will if I have to, but I don't want to deal with it, especially when it's unnecessary. I like harmony. I like peace. But you see, some, by bad attitudes, they hurt themselves, they hurt everybody around them, and believe me, some people even hang out with you. Remember when you were young, you hung out with people that did stuff because you liked to see what would happen? And then you get older and you get used to that and you just say, wow, I'd like to do that again. 1 Corinthians 15:33 for all of you who feel that way. 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, the 33rd verse, where it says, don't be fooled. Bad company ruins good character. I'm done. Christ's will for his body, the church, is peace, as much as depends upon us. And as I said, these are decisions we can make for ourselves. This had nothing to do with Washington. It has nothing to do with Tel Aviv. It has nothing to do with Jerusalem. It has nothing to do with New York. Romans, the 12th chapter, the 17th verse. Which brings us back to what God says through Romans. Repay no one evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of men. If it is possible, as far as is in you, be at peace with all men, or all mankind, if you don't like that. The selfish person could care less about peace. They like creating interference or interrupting, and they don't realize it, but in that interrupting in the church, you're interrupting the work of God. And don't think you won't be paid for it. But God hates this type of attitude and action, as it is unnecessary, and it is an unnecessary distraction in his work. We've seen a lot of that. You see, when the world makes it hard enough for us already. Why make it harder for ourselves? It doesn't make sense. As we move forward, we have to move forward not fearing what is to come, as some do, but standing with faith in Yeshua to stand up to what's coming. If we do these things, it'll be easier. For all this acting out according to the things that we do, we should be acting out according to the things that God hates. Because all these things that God hates are outward manifestations of our fear, of our weak faith. Let's go to, we'll be done. 1 John, the 4th chapter, the 16th verse. We'll drop a 10-ton brick and end it. 1 John, the 4th chapter, the 16th verse, where it says, and we have known and believed the love that God has in us. God is love. And he who abides in love abides in God. And God in him. There's a symbiotic relationship there. In this is our love made perfect, so that we may have boldness in the day of judgment, when we're dragged in front of whoever we're dragged in front of and have to give a testimony of what we believe, which, you know, when you get there, they don't want you to believe that, and they say, and already if you say that, we're going to kill you. That takes some courage. Instead of all that, doing all that other stuff that God hates, build that into your courage, because you'll need it in the day of judgment, that as he is, so also we are in this world. 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torments. He who fears has not been perfected in love. We love him because he loved us first and best. How many of us here would die for any one of us here? Don't answer the question. It was just rhetorical. Today. Tomorrow? I can't say that because I don't know. But the promise is there that at one point it's going to happen. So if we're at each other's throats, how do we care enough to put our throats on the line for each other? Let's get it together and recognize what God hates and avoid it. God bless you all.